Greetings and welcome back once again. This is Amuna Yisrael, SOULONOMiCS 101 Lev Project edition. For those who are not familiar with the Lev Project, from the beginning of this year, we have been going straight through reading the narratives of our foreparents during the institution of slavery. And it's with that project that we have, or with that lens rather, that we have looked at some of the recent shows such as Roots, that was the last one, and The Underground. And Roots right now is kicking up a lot of dust in the atmosphere and the blogosphere. And today I have a special guest with us, Project Russell, brother Project. He sent me his, I've been doing these reviews and I've been getting kind of a little bit of pushback as well as others. And he sent me his, blog, and I was like, wow, this is really good, brother. Do you want to come on? And so here he is. He decided that, said yes, and he's on. So brother Project, good morning. We up early this morning. How are you this morning?
I'm good. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. Like you said, I had to get up early. The babies are like, where you going? I'm like, I got to do a little thing this morning. But tell the people a little bit about yourself before we actually get into the meat and potatoes. Go ahead and introduce yourself and let us know who you are, and definitely tell us about your blog.
Okay. Yeah. My name is Project Russell. I'm originally from Charlotte, North Carolina. A communications major. Moved down here to Florida. I was a major at Full Sail University, and I started this blog. It's like pretty much honestmedia.blog.com. So basically it's just me talking about just random stuff I see in media, just random stuff I find interesting. So when I saw like the Roots, well, first when I saw like the trailer for Roots probably like a month or so ago, I already knew that, somebody would, someone would probably have a conversation about it. But I wasn't surprised about the whole Twitter backlash and like Snoop Dogg's rant and seeing like all these different debates, on TV and stuff. So I'm like, yeah, let me just put my 2 cents in, what I see.
Yeah, I didn't expect it. It's funny because The Underground, we reviewed The Underground like a few weeks before, and that one was like, what, 10 episodes long?
Right.
And it was definitely from another perspective. It was following 7. Did you see Underground?
I don't watch Underground either, and I'll explain why once you get into it.
Okay, because I tell you the truth, I don't have television. But because I wanted to assess what I was seeing, it was actually my mother who was like, you can watch it on the internet if you have a cable account. So I was like, what? So for this reason, I broke my no television watching habit for the last 8 years, and I actually indulged in watching The Underground. And so yeah, but go ahead. So you didn't watch Underground, which definitely came from another perspective. Everybody was like, well, tell another story. Underground told another story. Yeah. And so now here we are at Roots Reboot, and brother Project says he didn't watch Roots. Let's hear about it.
So yeah, I didn't watch Roots. Well, my whole gripe with films about American slavery, it actually started when I was a kid. Like when I saw the original Roots when I was in 5th grade in elementary school, and I still, like, my mom, she remembers more than I do. She told me she remembers me coming home upset after seeing it. But I remember sitting in class and watching like the original Roots. And I just hated watching the whole thing. Like, and I was the only one, it seemed like, in the class who had a real problem with it. And mind you, I'm like 1 out of 2 other black kids in the class. 2 of them were girls, so I'm the only black boy in class. And I'm just looking at all my classmates. We're watching Roots, and they're just cool. They're just sitting there watching it like it's a Walt Disney movie or something. Like, I'm just sitting there like uncomfortable, hating like just abuse of just seeing black men, black women, black kids, children being beat, raped, abused, the whole 9. So that's pretty much the whole thing you saw. So that started young, but I still would read the books. I read Roots. I read 12 Years a Slave. I do my own research on it, but like just seeing it, I just have an issue with it. But like today when I see like these slave films, from Django to Roots to 12 Years a Slave to Amistad, to like the whole, the list of that have come out in past, 2 decades or so. And I'm like, I find it ironic that the narratives are always from the perspective of the slave. It's always solely focused on, I guess what the slaves felt, what they were going through at the time. And I was like, okay. At first I didn't think anything of it, but that was until like Django came out, and I'm like, okay, well, if you're gonna solely focus on the perspective of the slave, what about the other portion of slavery? Like, what about the business behind slavery? That's what I want to know. I want to know about the economics behind slavery. I want to know about how much money was made off of, free labor from the slaves. I want to know about generational wealth that was passed down from, from the slave masters and their families, and how that, and you can kind of tie it into today, because I know, like, I've listened to, just some videos from Antonio Moore and Yvette Garnell. They mentioned this a couple of times when you think of like wealth disparities in this country, and how Black people are like a permanent underclass, and a lot of that stems from slavery, history from slavery, from wealth being stolen from Blacks. So it's like, I want to know about that. I want to know about the business. Slavery was a business. So if you're gonna like solely focus on the abuse, the oppression, we need those stories. So don't get me wrong, slave films need to be made, and they need to continue to be made. But when it's just one biased depiction of slavery, and when you're not telling me pretty much everything that happened, you're not telling me how you as the oppressor have benefited, how your family, how just white people in general have benefited from slavery, from like the economics behind slavery. Something's off, and I feel like something's trying to be hidden, and I just kind of got turned off by just this one depiction, because that's all you see, from like underground to, I know it's like a different perspective, but it's still coming from us, and that's great. But I want to know, pass the mic to the oppressor. I want to let them have the mic, and you explain everything to me, and really educate me on how you're here and I'm still down here. That's what I want to know. And
so Brother Project want to get in their pockets. Brother Project.
Tell me the numbers. I'm very, like, I hate to say this, but like, I listen, like when I do like research and stuff, like I'm very pragmatic when I see this stuff, because you really have to get down to the numbers. Like, psychology behind slavery is real, like how Black people interact today, or like Black Americans, you can say how we treat each other, how we treat our women, how even the fear that we still have for white people in general, and white supremacy in general, that stems from slavery. So the psychology behind it is there, which is good. I'm glad you're addressing that, but I want to know the numbers. I want to know just the business behind it, because that would help.
You know what's interesting? I watch a lot of documentaries. For those who just joined us, we have a special treat, Discovering Your Roots. This is the interview section that I do with the Lev Project, and this is Brother Project Russell, who's on the line. And people are like, Amuna, you all going in like people should watch the slave movie. So here you go. We have Brother Project. I'm all about fair discussion, and he's explaining to us why he didn't want to watch the series. And he's letting us know that he was traumatized. This is what I received when you first saw it. At what? How old were you? 5th grade?
I was 5th grade. I want to say 11, maybe.
11, thereabouts, 10, thereabouts, and it's traumatic. And so, and I'm glad that you have the words to articulate why or what you would rather see, because oftentimes when we're like, I don't want to see any more slave movies, we don't go beyond that. But you're able to articulate that this is my point of interest, because slavery is such a vast conversation. And I keep telling people this. There's so many sections, and it's kind of like the body. If you go to the orthopedic doesn't really want to see what the optometrist wants to see. You understand what I'm saying? So therefore, depending on where your specialty is, or what your desires or your interest is, that could be the reason as to why you're rejecting it. But for someone like me, who is very interested in healing, very interested in the psychological and the emotional effects that still affect us today, through this lens is what I'm processing, what I'm seeing. And so, like you're saying, everybody's processing it. But, there was a documentary by the Wolves. I'm not sure if you saw that documentary. There was the Wolf family, and it speaks about how their foreparents was one of the richest or most known slave traders.
Wow.
And they follow, and I believe it was on PBS. If not, if it wasn't on PBS, they did an independent documentary. And the money that you're talking about, Show Me the Money, they actually get together some of their family members who know that their family was like renowned slave traders. Look it up, the DeWolf family.
The Wolf family? Okay.
The DeWolf, DEWOLF, I believe their name, for those who are looking. Checked out that, because when I saw it, I was like, OD, you know, because we are walking around, but they are also walking around. And when some of the people found out how they got their wealth, they were shocked.
Right.
Because they also have quote unquote, Black people have a culture of secrecy, and to some degree, some of them do too. Some of them are ashamed of what they used to do. I mean, not ashamed that they really want to necessarily give up all the money, but ashamed of how they came about. And we saw that addressed many years ago. I don't know if you remember way back in the day, Different World. But there was an episode on Different World when they addressed where Whitney's character realized that her family was slave owners. I don't know if you remember that,
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
remember that? So
Yeah, I remember that too.
it was addressed in that way. And a lot of them are also finding out in this day and time, this is how they got their bread.
Right.
And so I do think that the money trail is very important. But what do you think about us? Because I'm all about personal responsibility. Oftentimes, we want to see what we want to see, but the reality is, and people might get mad, because slavery did not just exist with one person, then the people who were involved, both quote unquote white and black people, have the right to tell the story,
right,
from whatever perspective they want to, right or wrong. Like,
no, you're right.
So because they were also there. So if they're going to tell the story from the perspective of, hey, this is what I saw you looking like, then we have the right to also tell the story or ask the questions within our research, because the plantation records are there. That's a lot of work to do, though. These records are there. These records are available to us, but it's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of research to exhume some of these things, some of these plantations that were fixtures within the community and made a lot of money. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree with you. I agree with that's what, like, when I saw like Snoop Dogg's rant in particular, like I've heard that conversation before, especially like just in our community. We hate seeing that image. Like I told you just a second ago, like I've hated seeing it since, I was in elementary school. So if I don't necessarily go and watch the film, I'll go get a book about, what was going on. And reading the books was just as bad for me. Like 12 Years a Slave, when I read that still was hard to read through. But I still want to know the story. I still want to know what's going on. But my thing is just like, if we're going to have so many different layers, I guess so many different, so many stories that can be told, like with Nate Parker's Nat Turner film that's coming, Independent was coming out like that. That's probably going to be one of the few that I think I'm going to purposely go see within the past 5 years. So yeah, I'm definitely going to support that because it's a different perspective. So I mean, we all have a right to tell it, but I want to know, that's specifically what I want to know, because I'm looking at just, how we can quote unquote have so much wealth, I guess, in this country, but black people are still poor, just disproportionately poor compared to other groups. So it's like, I want to know how that ties into today. It's evident, just by the way, I guess, we act in the conversations we don't have, and then just the lack and just ignorance sometimes, that's in our communities, the psychology behind slavery and how, that has just trickled down to present day. But like, I really want to know, I just want to know the numbers. I want to know the fact. That's for real. I want you to educate me and educate all those, poor little black kids exactly why they're poor. And it's not something because their parents and their mommy and daddy isn't doing. It's because the system is set up a certain kind of way. And I want to know how the system got set up that way. Make an entire miniseries on that. And I'm all there. I'm all set. I would say, like the documentary you just recommended, I'm definitely gonna look into it, once I, in the conversation, for sure.
Yeah, I think, like you're saying, and again, we need all of these perspectives. And I would say that it's healthy. And that's one of the things with Western medicine is that they don't look at the holistic portion. So they will give you something that may be beneficial to your toe, but it's going to jack up your heart. And so you see those long commercials like may cause, sneezing, or even death. It's this long list. It's like, dude, I had irritable bowel syndrome, and now, you got heart palpitations. So we have to approach this thing in a kind of a holistic manner, as you're saying, where it is that, yes, everybody keeps saying it was business. And so if something is business, let's see the profitability. One of the things that I found in doing this reading is the switch that they had. Like, they allude to it. Like, for instance, in Underground, they alluded to the profitability of moving from tobacco and rice to cotton, and how this caused what would be the second migration. There were two mass migrations. There was the one where they stole from the continent, and then there was the one where they started stealing people when they wanted to sell you deeper down south, because now cotton became king, and everybody, they eroded all the soil because of bad business practices and bad farming practices, and they kept planting these crash crops that stole all of the nutrients. All of that is a story to be told as well. And so they started, when they messed up stuff on the coast, It was like, oh, let's go down to Louisiana, let's go down to Mississippi, let's go down to Alabama. And what that meant was they started stealing people off the roads. They started selling people, and so it was two. People think it was just one. It was actually two horrific capturings that took place, and we saw that happen in Charles Ball. He tells that story of how they stole him again. You understand what I'm saying? They stole him again. And so that was the economics. That whole movement was followed because everybody now wanted cotton. And once they understood how to grow it, and furthermore, once the cotton gin, which they thought was going to alleviate the labor, once that kicked in, we see how those inventions help to further fuel this economy. And so definitely, I think that is a story that needs to be told. And I think Brother Project, he might be able to help us in that research department. Brother Project, what you think?
Oh no, I was looking at well, first thing, I went to this museum like last weekend, and I saw this display because that's when I really started. That was before I wrote the blog post. I was like, I started asking a lot of questions because I'm like, I saw this display. It had a slave woman. She was worth $800. I guess sold for $800. And I'm like, okay, well, if she was a slave woman and she seemed, I want to say maybe, just looking at her, I'm like maybe 30ish, maybe 40 something. So if she had like a teenage, 17, 18-year-old son, you know what I mean? Or even like a 17, 18-year-old daughter, or both. Like, how much were they worth, and like how much were they sold for? And like that money that was, I guess the slave master made off of them, like where did that money go? Did that go to, purchasing more slaves, or did that go to some sort of investment? And then you read about how the slave masters raped the slave women to make more slaves, so they wouldn't have to purchase more slaves. Well, where was that money? I guess money that he was building, was he making money back from the selling of cotton? Like all these questions that I have, because black people didn't make any money. So I'm like, where was that money going? Like, I want to know about the corporations. I want to know about the banks, everything that was funded, like how, still benefits today. I forgot to pull up that link. Like I saw on Twitter, Atlanta Black Star, I know they had like a list of like corporations who profited from slavery. Like I forgot to pull up the link. I meant to do that. Right. Yeah, like stuff like that. I just want to know about that, and I feel like when you don't tell that portion of the story, because that's coming from the oppressor, we can't tell that story. And that's another thing, I get somewhat annoyed because I was pulling up like Roots, like the original as well as the remake, like the producers were white. You know what I mean? Cinematographer, I believe, most were white. So I'm like, okay, they're telling slave narratives from the perspective of a slave, but it's coming from white people. So I'm like, okay, that's not anything new. Because I mentioned this in my blog post, like Django Unchained's Quentin Tarantino, he had like a lot of like negative remarks to say about Roots, like when Django first came out, pretty much implying that Roots was inauthentic of some sort. And I was like, that's just typical, just kind of sense coming from, white people. But
it's like I said, from the perspective that I'm coming from as it relates to the damage, people, someone said, Amuna, what do you think about this? And they sent me an article about the plagiarism of Alex Haley in Roots, and from the book The African, and this came out many years ago. And what I'm saying is from the perspective of not just watching it for entertainment, that's one thing. I don't agree with watching these type of narratives with no other information in your head. Like it's nothing, you're not basing it on anything. So you're more inclined to believe everything that you're seeing because you have no point of reference.
Right.
For those who've been participating, or those like you who on their own read narratives and understand a bit, you're able to process and say, okay, historically accurate, not historically accurate. When we approach it to say that everything they're going to give us, I think this is oftentimes the rejection. And I saw Snoop Dogg's argument and many people's argument to think that everything that they're going to give you is going to be, it's like eating a fish with bones. You pick out the bones, but you're able to say, you know what, that is historically accurate.
Right.
And a lot of what I saw was accurate because I can cross-reference it, and this is what I did in the long reviews. And big up to everybody who watched the reviews, because I was going in and I wasn't just going off my dome. I gave you references to where you can go and see similar type stories. Right. And this is why they say oftentimes that it's not fiction, they call it faction. Mm-hmm. Like the underground is a level of faction. They made a fictitious story, but it's based on actual events. It's based on things that actually happened, and then they wrote it into their narrative. And for me, seeing it, to understand that our foreparents had to see it. Right. They had no choice.
Right.
And the fact that we cannot look in the eye that which has oppressed, that which has damaged, that means to a certain degree, it still has control over us.
Right, right.
And so when I say to be able to look at it, like when I have this book here, this is a book that they collected, 10 stories growing up in slavery. This is from the perspective of a child, like you were as a child. This book was written by, or compiled, edited by Yuval Taylor.
Okay.
Okay.
Growing up in slavery.
Growing up in slavery. And this is to give the perspective that these were children. And they are recounting the trauma that occurred to them at 4, 5, 7, 10, to see their parents whipped, beaten, everything that you can imagine. Understand that went down into the very soul of the individual. And we are still carrying that.
Right.
And so in order for us to be able to heal, in order for, it's like somebody has some kind of ailment, we have to be real about what we're seeing.
Right. Yeah.
It possibly, everybody's saying, for me, everybody's saying, you know, they're showing it to us because they want us to be this. It's going to be whatever we decide it's going to be. Mm-hmm. So because somebody can intend something for bad and you can make it for good. So thank you for spending the millions of dollars to show me you and me in this light concerning the damage. And that's kind of how I look at it. And I definitely understand the money angle, because and I'll give you the mic. I was just reading about the Zong massacre, Z-O-N-G massacre, right? And I was like, wow. And I didn't even know you was gonna ask about the money, but the Zong massacre was a ship that was coming to Jamaica, and there was a novice kind of captain on the ship, and his name escapes me right now. His name is Luke something, but look up Zong massacre. And the dude was like, oh man, you know, we don't have enough water to get, he lost his way. We don't have enough water. So he wanted to collect the insurance money. I'm like, oh, chill. They was insuring the slaves. So not only were they insuring the slips, this was coming out of England, and it became a big case. They was insuring the slaves at 30 pounds a head. And so he decided to throw 1/3 of the slaves off the ship because they were sick and dying, and if they died on the ship, he wouldn't get no money for them. Wow. So alive, he took them and threw them off. And when he got to Jamaica, he tried to claim the insurance money, and it became a big case. So when you talk about show me the money and where's that money trail, I just read that this week, and I was like, oh, I see. Well, go ahead, brother.
No, what you just said right there, I gotta look that up, because I'm like, that just sounds like, because I'm like, okay, if the slaves were like what, 3/5 of a person, they weren't even considered full people. They're kind of like just products, like you know, you just purchase and buy and use for, you know, goods and services. Like, I just want to know about that. That's sort of like trade. I want to know more. I just want, and when going back to what I was originally saying, like, we can't tell that story. Like we can't tell it because we didn't have that kind of power. Still don't have that kind of power. So that story has to be told from the oppressor. That story has to be told from their perspective, and that truth has to be told. So when it's never, you know, not told in full detail, that's what kind of just turned me off from just like this entire narrative, because it's always coming from us. So I'm like, the next film, please, you know, the next miniseries, please educate us on the funds, because I think it's like they're afraid to do that, because if they do that, then it's going to kind of like expose some things to the mass audience who, you know, they don't do any real research on like Black history or anything like that, that don't really care as much, you know, as, you know, some of us would, you know, about Black history. So it's like you're trying to protect like some sort of like the money, the corporations, everything that was built, founding fathers, everything. Like, even like Dr. Joy DeGruy, she mentioned that in the interview, and I used her quote in my post. I'm like, she pretty much said it, everything. She was like, when we pull back the covers on us, we pull back the covers on everyone. So we expose, you know, everything. We expose what really happened, the truth, what really happened. And it's like a rock going into that glass house, exposing something that doesn't need to be exposed. That's why I'm kind of turned off when it comes to just this one depiction, because it's like safe. I feel like it's safer to tell our story from our perspective, because you don't have to see who really was in charge. You really don't have to see what really happened in terms of, you know, just the wealth, you know. So,
but like you said, you know, for me in this day and time, like you said, we waiting on them to tell the story. It might be a real long time.
That's what I was actually going to ask you. Like, do you think that's going to happen anytime
soon? No. And this is why. And this is why one thing every time February roll around, I hear everybody like, oh, keep in mind it started off with 1 week of Black history.
Yeah.
And then it went to 1 month in the 70s. And I'm like, the other people didn't push for that, we did. And so my objective with the Lev Project is to go for 1 year, because this is something that so much of it has been lost. And we're 6 months now, praise be to the Most High. There's so much that has been lost that it is our responsibility. And in the same way, they feel that they can tell the story from their perspective, or because they understand that a lot of what they're consulting are narratives. And a lot of those narratives wasn't their perspective. It was our foreparents' perspective.
Right.
Because there was an era when slave narratives, when abolition slave narratives became very popular, because this was the material, this was the source material that abolitionists used to prove that slavery was a terrible institution. And so when we skip over the wealth of knowledge and resources, like for instance, in one narrative, Lewis Hughes, right? He tells a story where he wanted to make some money. He was in slavery, and he went to the manager of the salt brooks, and he was like, "Yo, let me get some tobacco, and I'm gonna start." And he started hustling. You understand what I'm saying? And so the story of how money was made and what was going on, and that could be told. And if we are really interested in looking at that from that perspective, there's a lot of information out there. But the fact of the matter is, it takes a lot of time, effort, and energy. It's kind of like we have to pick a spot because it's so expansive. You understand what I'm saying? We have to pick a spot and be like, yo, right here. And we're going to look at, because I actually wanted to go, one of the places where a lot of information is concerning one of the most affluent societies, slave societies in the South, was South Carolina.
Oh, yeah.
South Carolina. I'm like, yo, I gotta go there because this is where a lot of the slaves ports were. I mean, South Carolina was dirty rich. Charleston. You understand? And so if we want to know about, and I actually have the list of plantations. It was like 3 or 4 of them that I kind of wanted to go check out. So if you want to go up in the master's business, them dudes is open for business right now. They are like, they have tours up in there. Your thoughts?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. And what do you think about the because I hear this argument all the time too, as well, like with our community, about telling the story prior to slavery, telling more stories about, us being kings and queens, and what do you think? What are your thoughts on that? Like in terms of like? Yeah,
I've heard that. I hear that a lot. And here's my thoughts on it. Like I said, the slave narrative conversation is an expanse of 400 years or more, right? Leading up to this point. History is so broad that if we just broad brush everything, we're also doing an injustice, because the reality is, I know people might throw tomatoes at the screen. It's all good. Everybody was not a king and a queen. I'm sorry, I told you.
That's the truth. No, that's the truth. I agree.
Everybody, Brother Project, was not a queen and a queen. Please stop that.
Yeah,
you were living in kingdoms where you were the servant of that quote black king or queen, where you were the peasant class, when you paid tariffs to them.
Right.
So this idea is something that we want to tell ourselves so that to make us feel better. But the reality is, how many kings and queens do you have at one time?
Right. That's logic. True. That's what I'm saying. I'm all there for it.
You understand? And another thing is that there were so many people represented on the banks. There were so many different tribes that each one of them had their own system of rulership. And so therefore, when we go back to that space, because it was already fractionalized in Africa, it would be doing an injustice to try to say, hey, everybody was an Ashanti, everybody was a Fulani, everybody was from. That's not true either. Because they were pillaging and raping the whole continent. So there were many tribes that were pushed into those. So then you might tell that story, and I might say, hey, brother, and they're also people who came from afar. And I may say, hey, brother, you Ashanti. You're like, nah, I don't feel that. I'm not no Ashanti. And this is what's happening also in the community, because we're trying to put labels on people that they don't vibe with. And so What I'm saying is that, yes, there was life before, but what I'm concentrating as on somebody who's very interested in healing the soul is the injury. And the one thing that we do share collectively is the injury.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? Because when you came to that space, when you were in those barracoons, when you were put on those ships, you were no longer king such and such. You came as king such and such, prince such and such, queen such and such. You came as, you know, the master, whatever it is that you were, the warrior. But when they pushed you in that space and made you into a slave, that is the collective injury that we sustain. And until we can deal with that, I think we do ourselves a great disservice. It's not to say that slavery made you who you were and that you weren't someone before, but if you don't acknowledge that today, that's what we're suffering from.
Oh, yeah.
So I liken it to say that if somebody was a master, that somebody was a basketball, you know, they was a basketball, a track, or whatever it is, and back in the day, they was on top of their game. Back in the day, they was on top of their game. And they blew a kneecap.
Mm-hmm.
And they're in nostalgia on their couch. Like, yo, I remember when I used to score 50 points in a game. Okay, dude, you can't move now. You understand what I'm saying? So right. It's okay to remember, but what are you going to do now? Your knee is jacked up.
Right.
And that's kind of how we act. Like, yeah, we used to be kings and queens. Okay, and right about now, that's not the case. How do you get back there realistically?
See, that's why. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Like, just what you just said about the healing. Like, I kind of feel like, I guess we both have to heal from it. Black people and white people have to heal from it, just from how we, just from a psychological standpoint. But if we're really going to talk, I feel like more of the psychology is on us and more of the business is on them. Like, they have to own up. They have to tell what. That's why I keep thinking about money. I'm like, because we are damaged. We're like emotionally, mentally, spiritually damaged from like historically speaking, like what happened during slavery to this day. So that's us. I feel like us as a people have to, you know, have that type of healing between each other. But if they're going to actually, if you really they want to heal from what's really going on, I feel like you really have to own up to why we are like I guess systemically speaking, the level that Black people are in this country, why we are where we are right now. And that stems from wealth that they got and was stolen from us, and then was never given to us. When you think of what was it, the 40 acres? 40 acres after 40 acres.
They was like, yeah, that's not gonna happen.
All right. So like, you got like, how come we can't have those real conversations about reparations? How come you can't tell me in detail that story? When that story is told, when those real conversations are told to the same extent as how slavery was so bad, and yeah, we used to, you know, beat you like this and treat you like this because you were Black. And I'm glad you're owning up to that. But until you tell me the wealth, the money, like how you are benefiting and how I'm not benefiting from it, that's when I'll be able to believe that, okay, we're making strides to becoming like a post-gender society, post-racial society, because like this is where like you're owning up to the fact that, yeah, my family has money passed down to me and you are at the bottom. And that's the reason. You know what?
And I said this on another show with Brother Philippe Matthews. In studying this, to me, right, both people were injured, because if you look at it as a domestic violence, that's what I like to say, because if you study domestic violence and abuse, you can see, if you look at it as a domestic violence institution, you have the person, the oppressed and the oppressed are both injured, just in different ways. So, and I've read some narratives of Europeans, and they at that time, when there was no PC, there was no politically correct, they was raw and to the point, they understood that they also were damaged. So the thought that I can continue to oppress you and exact your labor without compensation is a level of illness in the mind.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? So when I say that they were affected, to be able to and Dr. Joyce DeGroot speaks about, to be able to do what you do and sleep at night, you have to have something going on inside of you. You have to sear your conscience to a certain degree. You have to not be present in the now to be able to do that.
Right.
And these are some of the things that they did. So they are affected in this day and time. This is where it's like the abusive mate, the male or female, because both parties get abused. When they punch you in your face, or they knock your tooth out, or they pull your hair, they let you know it's because of you. You're the reason I did this, because you keep making me. You understand what I'm saying? And this level of projection and deflection is what we see in this conversation. Like, and I said I was gonna do a video. The elder John Conyers, he wrote a reparation bill. I actually have it up on my computer right now. Real talk. All week I'm supposed to say I'm gonna do this video, and I wanted to read the entire reparations bill. And I'm gonna read just the title right now. I'm not sure if you heard about this reparations bill. It's called right here. So that y'all see, I'm really about this. I'm gonna let y'all see my computer for 1 second, so you can see I'm really about this. Hold on 1 second. Commission to study reparation. Here it is. You see this? It's on govtrack.us. HR 40, the 111th Commission to Study Reparations Proposal for African Americans Act. Now, this elder, I just want to show you something really quickly. This elder right here has been introducing this bill over the last 20 years. This is the elder right here. And I did a short video on him before, but this is the elder. He's out of Michigan. And the purpose of the bill is not yet to say how much you owe. The purpose of the bill is to assess the damage. So it says here to acknowledge the fundamental injustice, cruelty, brutality, and inhumanity of slavery in the United States and 13 American colonies between 1619 and 1865. Hold on 1 second. That's him right there. It says also, and hold on, let me go here, because I think this is very interesting. As we're speaking about this conversation, there's a lot of stuff that we can't realistically expect that they're going to do. This bill has been shot down 10 times. Every 2 years he presents it, and it does not, that you see it keeps saying died in Congress, meaning they're not even trying to touch it with a 10-foot pole. It says here, subsequently, de jure and de facto racial and economic, the same thing you're speaking about, Brother Project. He wants to look into this discrimination against African Americans and the impact of these forces on living African Americans, same thing you're bringing up, to make recommendations to the Congress on appropriate remedies and for other purposes. Like basically how much you gonna owe. And he's been bringing it forth every January since 1997. Next year is going to be 2017. Okay? And every time he brings it forth, and I'm going to do another video to go into the fullness of what the bill says, because it goes in deep. But every time he brings it forth, they're like, nah, we're not really trying to hear that. But the reality is this. Go ahead. No,
I was just going to say, so do you think that because I didn't even know about, I didn't, when you just showed me right now, I just found out about it. So if we make more noise about it, I guess in terms of, since everything's about social media and hashtagging and getting, trending and stuff, if we as a community were to, make this about that, do you think some sort of attention would be rebuilt? Just like if we were to make more noise solely about that reparations, or that bill, reparations in general. Yeah,
because this is the thing. They are oftentimes very structured, very analytical. It has to be facts. Where are the facts? So like I said before, I think that this Roots movie, when I read the reparation bill, I'm like, thank you for spending millions of dollars to document some stuff. Because, you know what I mean? This is how I'm looking at it because of my research. I'm like, high five to you. That's what's up. So thank you. And here you co-signed it. And when we at this, and like you said, and bring this awareness, because this last year, international people came to the UN, and this international organization is like, you have to stop this. They're like, hey, and there's a news article about it. They're like, hey, you need to look at this bill, because we see the way that you're treating quote unquote Black people in America, and this is not right. So there is now an international look or view or attention. This very bill that for the last 20 years have been ignored. So I agree with you. If we, and I wanted to do a video about it, as well as, like you said, if we bring more attention and see what is needed, because he's in the con, he's been there for over 50 something years. Yeah. And he keeps pushing, but they're like, if it doesn't have enough steam, so every January, so I believe now, because it's every 2 years, the next January 2017 coming up, he's probably going to try to do it again.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, like you said, more attention needs to be. It's one thing just to say, yeah, reparations. Is another thing to systematically do what needs to be done so that it is done in the right way.
And
So,
and when we have, and not to cut you, I'm sorry, not to cut you. Like when we have that kind of conversation, like when say reparations, do you think that we as a community, because I think that a lot of people think, oh yeah, a check is going to be mailed to my house, because I think they touch base on like Hidden Colors. They touch base, about on reparations, and like, okay, like if they're real conversation, if they would distribute reparations, everybody who's 1/3 Black, everybody's gonna claim, oh, I'm Black, I want a check too, like that kind of thing. Like I don't want like a check mail or anything like that. I don't want a personal check handed to me for something that I didn't do. I kind of wanted to be thrown into the community to fix some things, fix the schools, fix the communities at large, and get people working, like that kind of thing. That's what, when I think about reparations, that's just me just thinking about that.
correct. And as maybe you can come back and we can read through it. And those who are on, I want to thank you for. Let me go ahead and see if we get any feedback. I see a number of viewers, but when we come back and have the conversation, we could take a look at just that, because reparations, as we are understanding, is not just on the monetary level. Monetary injustice is not the only thing that happened. And as we can see, that there's so many levels of destruction of the community that money in itself is not going to fix the problem. I'm just going to go on record as saying that as well. Money is not going to fix the problem. Because I saw a European, he may have been doing some type of satire or whatever the case may be, but somebody posted it. He was on YouTube and he said, I got an idea. I'm gonna run for president, and if I find back that video, I'll share it. He says, I'm gonna run for president, and I got an idea. And this is how we can get some reparations for the quote unquote Black people, so that they could be quiet, right? But it's all good. Listen to the mentality. He said, but it's all good, because we're gonna cut them off. Say we give each of them $400,000, and this is how we're gonna get the money, but they're just gonna spend it back into the economy anyway and buy stuff. So we'll get it back into the economy. And I was like, word. And the sad part about it is the majority of it is true.
It doesn't, right, what you just said. It's like the ugly truth. Like I would hate for like a check to be mailed to, even I think about just certain people, that I know in my circle, like a check to be mailed and we just blow it on like something that's that it holds no merit at all, just not even worth it. So I don't know. I think that's like what you just said, a much deeper conversation besides like just monetary, like just the money behind, slavery. Like it is psychology behind it that affects Black people and white people. And I think if we have like real conversations, if we really want to be opposed, just tell the truth, the whole truth. And that's pretty much what I meant, what I was saying, in terms of that my blog post. Like I just want to know everything, and I don't want it to just be just one bias, I guess, story or narrative in a sense.
All right, we have some feedback here, Brother Project. We have T.I. Cole said, I never thought about looking at slavery from an economical and psychological perspective or point of view. And Moni says, the gentleman is right to ask the question about business of slavery. The records are there. 2, it's our responsibility to inform ourselves and tell our own story. And I agree. If someone else isn't telling the story you want to hear, then you have to take it upon yourself. By waiting on the oppressor to tell us our story, we put ourselves in a very vulnerable place. I agree with that. Kojo says, I didn't know this was live. Yeah, it's live. How about land? We need sovereign land. That's what Vector is saying. So thank everybody who's tuning in. And as we're saying, this is why that for me, it has to be a multifaceted conversation. When I look at all of the movements, Marcus Garvey, the major movements, Elijah Poole, Nation of Islam, Hebrew Israelites. When I look at Malcolm X, civil rights, and Martin Luther King, Black Panthers, everybody was addressing, just like this conversation, the point of view that is most important to them.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is, for me, just looking back at history, it's collective. Mm-hmm. Because if we leave out the healing conversation and just concern on the money conversation, then we're going to have the problems that's going to arise from what possessions can do. And we see that in a lot of movements. You understand? Right. If we have, and this is what I find in doing business, one of the effects or long-term effects of having your labor exacted without compensation is to then view yourself and those who look like you as not worthy. And so when Black people try to do business, you hear stuff like, let me get the hookup. You know what I'm saying? Let me get some of that. Because why? You have been taught so long that your labor is not valuable. And so when we come into a sphere, what do we have? We have complaints about not being able to build because we're not willing to pay each other what we're worth. Right. That is psychological, but it is also dealing with money. And Dr. Boyd speaks about it a lot. You understand? Right. So, and then we come from a perspective of we're going to gather a whole lot of things. Then we look at Black Wall Street. Well, you gather a whole lot of stuff in this hostile environment without a military. They coming to get you. Mm-hmm. You understand what I'm saying? So we see that because we've been destroyed as a people, we don't realize that every faction of our society or every component is absolutely necessary, because once you amass wealth, who in the world going to protect it? Right. Right. So they can just come in and be like, I don't want you to have this. Burn a fire and you go tumbling down. And we see this happen as well. You understand? Because now you're in a space where psychologically the people who you are cohabiting this space with have said to themselves, and we see that throughout the narratives, we see that in the Black Wall Street narratives, that who are these Negroes to be having what I can't afford? Mm-hmm. So here comes the jealousy, here comes the envy, and you are now a target. And so the conversation needs to be had in a round table, kind of like what we're doing from all different perspectives. And then someone said, what about land? But that's the same thing about land. You can't be sovereign in a land that's not your own, because it's like saying, and I always say it's like this: you live in your parents' house, they paying everything, and you in your room putting your flag. I'm talking about I'm sovereign in their house. You don't look like that. Right. Yeah, how do you declare sovereignty in somebody else's house? Yeah. Right. You know, it's a lot. There were some slaves, and there were a lot of narratives who they had an opportunity. Some had an opportunity to go back, and they formed certain colonies like Sierra Leone, like Liberia, where it is they were actually starting a fund. This is what Thomas Jefferson. I said George Jefferson. This is what Thomas Jefferson one time, this is when everybody is quoting that portion of him saying, you know, the Black people are not like us, their nose, they sweat, this and that. He was having a conversation at the time. They was like, yo, send them back, because we can't free them and leave them here. If we read the whole thing of what he's saying in context, he's like, yo, if we free them and leave them here, it's going to be a problem. So I think we should send them back. And they actually started, what was the name of they actually started a organization to try to get monies to send people back. But guess what? After a lot of the slaves, they didn't want to go. So here lies the problem.
You know, that's especially slaves who were born, like you're an American, like it's one thing to have Africans here, and they're not, you know, they came here and had families. You know, you have children born, Black African Americans. You're American. This is just as much as yours as it is anyone else's. So like, yeah, sending people back.
But this is the thing though, because we're having the same thing. My thing is, if we become a student of history and look at the good things that happen and the bad things that happen, especially in all of the thought processes, there were one thought process that came up in the early 1900s, late 1800s, is education. Mm-hmm. If you get education, this is your way out. Mm-hmm. They said, you lie, you still in our system. And then Marcus Garvey was like, all right, back to Africa, UNIA, if we give you a sense of self and sense of pride, then and it was like, you a lie. So then there's something, then it's like, oh, let's integrate. No, you was a lie again. So it's like, we have to at some point sit back and be like, wait, hold up. How can this really happen? Because in every approach that we have attempted, there's something about it that didn't allow it to go through. And as a matter of fact, some will say, like in that Boondocks cartoon, if Martin Luther King came back and saw what the people were doing, you know, they have Martin Luther King. It was doing it in a satire kind of way. But Martin Luther King in the Boondocks conversation was like, this is what I did all this work for. You know, and they was partying, they was clubbing, they was twerking, and he's like, "What's this?" That's not all of who we are, but the large majority of our people are being are falling victim to the wiles. Let's just say that. What are your thoughts on that?
What you just said right there, falling victim to the wiles. When you think of like behavior of black, and that's like a whole conversation right there. What you just mentioned, that's not all on us. That's like systemically set up in place. Like that's how you keep. When you think of like the whole hood rich lifestyle, you think I'm gonna take all this money that I make doing whatever, probably something legal, and I'm gonna spend it on all this stuff that doesn't even matter. That's like systemic. That's like systemic. Like we are. That's not who we are as a people. And like if we start having like real conversations on how to making that kind of money and pulling our wealth and building within our own and like group economics. If we start having more conversations about that kind of stuff, that's when we're really going to be a threat. Like I think like this idea that we're a threat just from just having like I keep saying hood rich, but that's kind of what I'm thinking of in my mind. Like people, we're not a threat. We really don't even have, like Yvette Carnell says it all the time, like black wealth really doesn't even really exist here in this country as much, because you think of like the top, what is it, 5% of like black people? I'm thinking of like the Oprahs, like the elite. Like that's like not even, is that even 5%? Like real wealth who have, like generational wealth just to pass down. Like a lot of us don't even know. We can't even touch the riches of white people. So that's why I keep going back to wanting to know how we got this way, how we are in 2016. We're still even having these types of conversations. Correct. This is quote unquote like post-racial. This is like we're in a new time. You got a black president. You got like even in 8 years with Obama, you can't even say that anything's really changed with like black people in terms of economics and business and schools and that. Like we're still broke. You still struggling. Like like this. I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to connect the dots. So like that's why I just can't. And I hear what you're saying, because we do have to heal. Like, but it's like I want to know. Me healing is you're gonna have to show me how money is like.
Yeah, but here's the thing with that, and I've been listening lately to recent history of certain groups that have tried to empower the people, and I always look for what happened, and I'm gonna come to a lot of the comments. I'm gonna come to it right now, and here's the thing that always happens: money, jealousy, and envy. So no matter how much money we attain, physical possessions, if we don't deal with that space within us that says you do not have the right to excel over me because you are a slave just like I am. This is in the subconscious. This is at a very deep level of who we are. And this is when you look at what happened to a lot of the movements, it was internal. Yes, the external factors played off of that, but you understand what I'm saying? This thought is still there, brother. So my point about healing is, in order to restore or return to your former glory, so to say, we have to be willing to do the inside work, because, okay, we come together when we broke, yeah, we're going to do this. All right, we start making thousands now. Oh, this brother's taking the money. Oh, this brother, I'm not getting my fair cut. I'm going to go my own way. And then we have splinter groups everywhere. This is how it happens. And at this point, it's on automatic. It's running by itself. The programming is doing its own thing. They don't really have to do much at this point. We're kind of doing it to ourselves. Right. But I want to read some of this. What we have here, it is, we just going to be on. I want to thank Brother Project. We're going to be on just for a little bit more. Okay. And let's see here. African Americans need a fund. Don't worry. Okay, we need more slave era movies. Our ignorance of slavery is huge. I agree that with you already know I'm gonna agree with that, Cujo. I already agree with that all day long. We say stuff like slavery was bad, really bad. Yeah. We have no idea the level. It's like somebody going into a house and you know how they have that Flip This House show, and everybody's like, oh, they want to get into house flipping, but they don't have no idea how deep the damage go, whether or not it's flood, fire, or whatever. And you have to go to the very core, and they go to the history of it. It's kind of like today when you get a car, you get a Carfax. Why? Because you want to know, what has this car been through before I invest in it. And so when we don't know what we've been through, whether it be on the economic, emotional, mental, physical front, we're setting ourselves up. you know, we're setting ourselves up. So Vector says, don't worry, Cujo. Once Trump gets elected, there will be plenty of slavery education going on firsthand. African Americans need a fund just like the Jews have for Israel. That's Vector 313. And follow the same blueprint, UN-backed land purchased for our own sovereignty nation. And then Moni says, on sovereignty, white people are not on their land, either in the United States. Jews are not on their land in the United States, but sovereignty starts in the mind. The Jews do one thing very well, and that is taking seriously their integrational continuation as a people with a distinct culture, even though they may not have within the U.S. a land of their own. We're going to touch on some of these things. And Vector says, and this is another thing that's floating around the community, sovereignty. People getting sovereignty papers, and it's becoming a whole mess. Let me just say that. It's not even just something that's in theory. People are actually doing it, and it's becoming, you know, problematic. I've been watching what's going on. I watch a lot. You know, I speak a little, I watch a lot. It says, and it is taken seriously, okay, the act of as a nation within a nation, and Black ancestors such as Amos Whistle have spoken for generations now about African Americans acting as a nation within a nation. That means taking control of our own education, supporting our own economy, and so on and so forth. The best example for that is the Nation of Islam. And then lastly, we have fact is most Africans on the continent of Africa still don't have true sovereignty because white supremacy is global, and that part is accurate. That's Moni. And the various African nations, one that was closest to sovereignty was Libya. And we know what happened there. If we don't know, you know, that's some good research right there. We absolutely destroyed by the US. So yeah, sovereignty starts in our minds, and then there's no stopping it. But in the US, as well as in Africa, we are culturally colonized by the white culture. Woo! That's some good feedback right there.
What should we do? Like, I mean, like, if it does start in our minds, like what am I supposed to? I guess I don't know. I don't want to say baby steps. What are the kind of, I know what we're doing right now is, you know, is constructive, but like, what am I supposed to do with all of my other, you know, friends and family in my circle, just to wake them up, quote unquote, wake up, be
education.
Woke. Like, I mean, because it's like you can put it out there, and a lot of I know family members, friends that will wait for these types of slave films to come out and to be educated just solely off of what they've seen from Hollywood. This is not like they're going to do in research from reading the book. Like, you're just going to wait for like the next miniseries, like, oh yeah, they're telling about our history. Like, no, well, okay, but like, are you gonna, you know what I mean? So that's the frustration within itself. Like, just getting that excitement to really want to know who you are, where you come from, what it is. Because when you really get that itch to really learn, you know, really want to really understand your history and the kind of people you come from, it just changes your perspective on just your everyday. So it's hard for me to even like have like real constructive conversations with the majority of, you know, people, you know, in my circle. Right. You know, it's not like I mean, yeah, we very intelligent people, but like, can we just get to the
you know, again, Brother Broderick, that comes from the system of racism and white supremacy and the slave experience, because the truth of the matter is, for parents who were here in America, that was beaten into you. That thought of it's not true unless the European says it's true was something that was drilled into your mind. The thought of if someone who comes to you that looks like you tells you this is the whole, do you have your papers? Do you have your traveling pass? Did the European stamp his approval on what it is that you're doing? And this will catch you. You can be sold. You could have been beaten. You could have been accosted, all for believing something that he didn't say. So they asked, did Master say you could say that? The Master, and it's not something that to say that Master was better. This was the fear that was instilled. And so now Master's saying it's okay for you to look at this. And so they say, yes, I can look at it, because subconsciously this is why you say, for me, where to start, it starts right there. It starts with beginning to purge. How do you detox? You have to purge the toxins. Like, you can't start taking vitamins. I'm taking power smoothies. You understand what I'm saying? I start doing I'm starting to work out. Yeah. No, they say detox first.
Right.
This is the first thing that we need to do, detox. If we take the health paradigm of how it is, if you're eating, and by the way, you know, Amuna, she likes to throw in stuff. So if you're eating a lot of prepackaged food with a whole lot of additives and preservatives that are killing you, okay? and you want to know how do I start to regain my health, the first thing you do is stop eating the food. The second thing you do is detox from the effects of having eaten that food. And then you begin to put in the good food.
Right.
So psychologically, emotionally, and mentally, and economically, we begin to stop consuming. So if you're buying $500 weaves, stop it.
Yeah.
If you're buying $300 sneakers, stop it.
Yeah.
If you are investing all of your monies, this is speaking financially now, into what it is that they said that you should be, stop it. That's number one. And then you begin to detox the thought that I'm not good enough as I am. I have to look like, you understand what I'm saying? And it works on every front, spiritually, emotionally, physically, financially. If we follow that paradigm of first stopping what you're doing, just stop. And so some tell you the truth, a lot of quote unquote Black people need to cancel their cable. Just turn it off.
Oh yeah.
Just stop.
Okay. For sure.
Just stop, because that's the garbage. You're consuming garbage straight up and down. Stop it. And you will save money. You want to be like, oh, I don't have enough money to do this course or whatever. I bet you if you cancel that cable with them 1,000 channels, you understand, and you turn it off, you will find other means of entertainment. And back in the day when there wasn't cable or even before radio, they read and they had conversations. And so when you take those distractions out the way, now you can hear me and I can hear you. What are your thoughts, brother?
Yeah, I agree. Everything you just said, 110%. I agree. Like, just I don't know. I think I want to. That's kind of what my, I guess, mission is. Anytime I read something, I send it to just probably like my little brother, cousins,
right?
Somebody in my neighborhood. Like, just check this out. Like, I don't even press you just to read it. I just want to encourage you just to learn something about yourself, learn something about who you are. So it might change your perspective on what you're doing. You know, just some sort of social change. I don't have all the answers. I'm just trying to figure it out myself. But like, I don't know. I just question a lot. I just question a lot of things that just happen and why we think the way we think and act and treat each other the way we treat each other. And then just like when you thought about when you just mentioned the fear, I'm like, yo, that is real. That's why we do think that the white ice is colder than black ice.
Yes.
It's like, wow.
You were taught that. Not only were you taught it, I started off the Lev Project, and let me show you how simple social media is in this day and time. I have children, as you can hear them. They over here grilling me, so you know. But the point of the matter is, you can just decide that you're going to do one thing. First, to educate yourself, and then to help educate others. You don't force anybody. You just simply share. And I can't tell you how many people who have said, just from reading, it's revolutionary. Our foreparents in this country were beaten, maimed for reading. Understand that it's revolutionary. Why? Because it's going to broaden your mind and your perspective on things so that we can get that understanding. Like you said, you ask a lot of questions, and that is good, because questions mean I want understanding. This is why the babies say, well, why, mommy? Well, why did this? Because they're trying to process it in their mind. Why is this so? And what I found is that used to be me. But when I start reading, I'm like, oh, that's what happened.
Right.
And so when I look at our brothers and sisters, I can say, okay, there's some who's gonna come and they have that same desire, they have that same itch. And it's nothing that you force them. Many people, when I started off, let me tell you something, brother, didn't nobody want to read. They're like, I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to see it. I never watch Roots. And after the process of going through, and this, what we're doing here is so small, but it may seem small, but it's not. And it is allowing each other to experience and express something that you weren't allowed to do. Oh, hush now, child. Don't play that. No, never mind. That's over. You just saw your mother sell. Hush now, child. That's over. You just saw your father beat. Hush now, child. Don't talk about it. What it did was it stuffed the emotions down into your very soul. And you pass that thought on to your generations. So just talking, and I'm getting goosebumps, but just allowing a voice to one another is healing.
Oh, yeah.
You feel me? And so when we do that, these very small things, it builds trust, it builds bonds. You understand what I'm saying? And it fosters healing. It's like taking the thing off the wound so it can get some air. And so you can clean it out. And so you start to see new skin growing. Very, very important stuff. So let me see here, Brother Project, because y'all know I get impassioned with this kind of stuff. I'm going to calm down.
Everything you just said, I agree.
It says here, A slave affects us more than we know. I like how you touched on the second forced migration. It explains why we speak English language the way we do. That's from Kojo. Kane Kojo, we'll have to talk more about that second forced migration. Most African Americans have roots in Virginia, Maryland, North and South Carolina, because that's where a lot of the people landed, or that was the first places where it was populated, you know. And from there, you know, everybody was pushed all over the place. And Muna gives me hope that there are Black women out there with a sense to raise Black children, with a sense of the next generation. Big up yourself, Moni. Yeah, and this is the thing. Sometimes we focus on everything that's not working. You know, everybody's not coming and everybody's not getting it, and done with that. I'm gonna have to get Jamaican on y'all because that's where my parents is from. Done with that. Don't worry about that. You see, if we have a Broderick and we have a Moni and we have a 313, what that is when you have certain people vibrating at a certain level of frequency, it's called exponential. You remember back in school when they put the exponent, so it's to the second power, it's to the third power. So when we're looking for everybody to the first power, we're not really expanding. But if we have people who are about what they're saying, we can reach so many more people because now it's exponential.
Right.
And hopefully this is where we are. I'm just one.
Right.
I'm just one with 4 babies up in here looking at me like I'm crazy with a Google Hangout. And the desire, and look how many thousands of people are reaching from one. Who says, you know what, I'm going to now try and do something. A lot of what we're reading is straight free. Let me just say that again. Yeah,
for sure. Like it takes no effort to like go on Google and just like a matter of seconds we can find out.
It has never been like this in history, Brother Broderick.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. Like what I don't know what it is. Like I don't need anybody to preach. We don't even really need like a savior or somebody to preach to us. You can be your own, say like formulate your own opinion and objective opinion based off of research. It takes seconds to learn about yourself.
All you have to do is
just get that sort of motivation in our community. That's what I'm trying to figure out.
That's all you have to do is want it. All you have to do is want it for yourself, like you said. And all you do is, you know how people, I don't smoke, but people be like, you got a light? They already have their own, whatever it is they're going to be smoking. You understand what I'm saying? But they ask you for a light.
Right.
Give me the light. You remember Sean Paul? So, you know, we ain't going to be passing no dro. But the point of the matter is sometimes somebody else got the light.
Right.
And all you have to do is extend a little bit of light, and they have their own passion within them that's going to burn. And they're going to go in the direction that they need to go in. And like you said, we don't need anybody really to lord over us, because that has always failed. Because once they take out the head, it's gone.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. Hello, it doesn't work. Right. What we need is true revolution and awakening within the soul.
Right.
And then if you're the only one, push through.
Yeah.
That's all. And you know, anyway, Brother Broderick, I like talking to you. It was a good conversation.
It was a good conversation.
Yeah, it was a really good conversation. I hope you come back. Like I said, I've been having this on my computer since Monday, and I keep saying to myself, I'm gonna go over this HR 40 so we can see the depths of what this elder. He's like, I forgot how old he is. He like 80 something now. Like he's old, and he's been in the trenches, and we can't afford to just let this pass. Because some of the very framework has been done already for us. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We kind of just like to look and see how it is that we can help further along this conversation and bring it to the forefront.
For sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm definitely going to check out those books as well as read that bill tonight. Like, well, yeah, I'm going to
check that bill out. I'm going to put it here. Stop it. I'm going to put the bill. It's on once again for those. Stop it, no boy. He moving my mouth. The bill is called HR 40, and it's on govtrack.us. You can see the life of the bill. You can see every time it was introduced. Over the years, he had 31 co-sponsors, but it hasn't been able to come off the Senate floor. And I didn't even know a whole lot about that process. You know, I was asleep in American history, so I had to go back to the whole process and see how things get pushed through.
Right.
This is the Commission to Study Reparations Proposal for African Americans Act. And he, in the bill, I forget how many millions of dollars he wants to be allocated to those who are proficient in these areas. This is why this study is very important. And like Dr. Joyce DeGruy, we have Power Dynamics, Dr. Claude Anderson, we have Dr. Boyce Watkins. We have all of these people who are proficient in their areas. We need that because they're going to have to testify.
Absolutely.
You understand what I'm saying? They're going to have to be like, yeah, this is the damage that has been done in this area over this amount of time. Absolutely. And we just lost one very important, Dr. Francis Cress Wilson, who did a lot of work and research in this area. But we need the younger generation to come up and take the mantle and continue to have this conversation. Anything you would like to say lastly, Brother Broderick?
No, what you just said, Claude Anderson. Shout out to Dr. Claude Anderson, because that's when I quote unquote was woke. You know, after I read SOULONOMiCS. Yeah, when I read SOULONOMiCS, that just everything upstairs just clicked. I'm like, oh, okay. I get it.
Okay.
That's what it is. Shout out to
yeah. There's so many people who are even behind the scenes who we may not see on the YouTube world, social media world, who've been in the trenches for years, who are proficient in their area. I saw a I watch off the cuff thing, and actually somebody sent me it. It was a C-SPAN report, and I forgot his name. It's a brother who is proficient on the underground conversation.
Okay.
And so we have these historians, they may be off and we're going to need them because we're going to need real-time data and real research to say, listen, this is the damage on each and every front. So if you have an opportunity, read the HR 40 bill. We'll come back here at another time and discuss this bill so that we could possibly, if we could collectively push this out into social media land, and have a real conversation, not, you know, I'm chilling in my living room talking about, yeah, you know, what I think should happen is we need to come up off that and we need to come ready to have the conversation.
Sure.
So any last things you would like to say, brother? Like I said, once again, I enjoyed you coming through. Very good conversation.
Yeah, definitely. Whenever you have like a random, or if I see something, if I write about something else, you know, on my blog, and if I find it interesting, I definitely just send it to you. Just
sounds good.
Your perspective on whatever it is. That, you know.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So for those who have, we need to become giving me goosebumps with the exponential power. Black love. Big up yourself, Moni, Vector, Kojo. Let me see if I miss anybody else. Let me see here. Thank you for your spirited Vector 313 for your and T.I. Cole. Thank you for your spirited conversation and your sharing. I value all of it. I try to get to all of the comments under the videos. You know, the channel is growing because people are appreciating the amount of information. And this is what I'll just say this one thing. I watch a lot of lectures and one thing is very important to me is to source your information. Because sometimes we hear people and then we'll repeat what they said, but we don't know where they got it from. Right. And so when somebody pulls our coattail, we look silly and confused. So when people say, my goodness, Amuna, dang, like another elder's like, my goodness, your bibliography is like you writing a dissertation. I do that because I don't want anybody to ever say, Amuna said something that she just made that up. Because I'm not here for that. And so I'm all about doing your own research. You know, and so in the way that I can, I give you the information where I got it from, where I came across, because my frame of reference is different from yours, as we saw through this conversation. So I'm looking for points of injury as it relates to the soul, as it relates to the emotions, the psychology. If Broderick goes on the same information, he's going to be looking for the finances.
You know it for sure.
And you know it. You understand? And so this is why we need different eyes on the same information. We don't need to hog. We need to get beyond that. It's mine. You know, you don't need to come follow me. You don't need to know what I did, because you're going to be able to bring out, wow, Mona, did you see such and such? I wasn't looking for such and such. So I didn't see that, but you did. And that's the value of coming together in that way. So once again, I'm going to come off my soapbox for now. I have another interview. I'll share it on social media. I have another interview with our brother Philip Matthews later on today. That's 2 o'clock. I think it's 2 o'clock. Is it 2 o'clock? 2 o'clock Eastern time, if I'm not mistaken. And that will be on his channel. So I'll definitely share the link. And once again, Brother Project, thank you for coming in. Now you're a friend of the Lev Project, so feel free to come back.
Yo, for sure. And I'm not even on Facebook, so can I find y'all on like? I know I found you on Twitter, so can I like
Yeah, you
find
found me
you
on Twitter. I'm gonna start. You know what? I've been slipping. I'm not even gonna front. I've been slipping by not posting on Twitter as much as I should. Because sometimes you kind of lean to one end. So I lean to Facebook, and I realize that. So I'm gonna start posting when we go live, like this one I posted on Twitter. And so I'm gonna start posting more. It's only a click of a box. I don't know why I don't do it, but I'm gonna definitely start clicking the box when we go live.
Cool. Well, yeah, whenever just invite me on, I'll be happy to come back.
Sounds good. So thank you once again, everybody, for tuning in. And once again, continue to go forward and be that change that you decide to see in the world. One.
All right.